Me. Hobby Lobby. They won. Hobby Lobby won 5-4 today at the Supreme Court. Religious freedom, it seems, is at least somewhat alive in this country. I'm not sure we could say it is well, given the proclivity of this administration to trample on it at every opportunity. It is a 5-4 decision. From what I understand, as I'm getting bits and pieces of the judgment in front of me, the justices said, look, this is not... Well, let me give you some of the background. Just the most important thing, 5-4, Hobby Lobby won. The government cannot force a corporation, because, yes, corporations have rights like people, despite what Occupy Wall Street says. They cannot force a corporation to buy contraception for employees if they do not wish to do so. They cannot force them to pick a plan that has that, essentially. They cannot force them to subsidize that or pay for it. That's what I'm hearing. But the background, to really understand this, and by the way, the case is now Burwell v. Hobby Lobby because our old pal Kathleen Sebelius is no longer HHS secretary, and so because it's HHS essentially v. Hobby Lobby, Burwell has now been substituted in because she is the head of HHS. So there are two cases before the court that have been decided today under this, what everyone's just going to refer to as Hobby Lobby, just so you know. You're just going to hear it as Hobby Lobby. But there's also Conestoga Wood, which is a similar situation. They don't want to pay for a certain kind of birth control, and so they're not. Now, it seems, they're not going to have to do so. But here's the background. Congress, and this is what's so important for you to know and understand as we talk about this, this is not, strictly speaking, a First Amendment case. This is about an existing federal statute called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. This is not just a flat-out first. You're going to hear people say, oh, the First Amendment, free exercise clause, religion. That is the underpinning of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, but the RFRA, which is federal law, is an addendum to, in addition to, if you will, the First Amendment. And what it means is that the government has to apply strict scrutiny. General applicability is not enough. So what that says is that it's not enough to just say, ipso facto, you can't just say, oh, everybody has to buy this kind of birth control, therefore it's okay. Since it's non-discriminatory because everybody has to do it, it's okay. This goes back to a case, Employment Division v. Smith. Well, in that case, somebody for religious ritual wanted to take drugs. And the court looked at it and said, well, you know what? Keeping people from imbibing Schedule I or Schedule II prohibited, federally prohibited substances under the Controlled Substances Act, the CSA, which is a bad law, but we'll talk about that another time. We got a lot to cover today. They said that a general applicability is not enough as a principle. It has to also then be elevated to strict scrutiny. Does the government have a compelling state interest? And is this the least intrusive way of achieving that interest? That's the additive that is the RFRA on top of the First Amendment. So this then, when people say to you, oh, what are you trying to suggest? That like, oh, my religion says that I get to just go 120 miles an hour on the highway. No, that's not. Because actually that would fail even under the RFRA because there is a strict scrutiny interest and general applicability in preventing people from causing 8-car pileups that kill lots of people. That's understandable. And the best way to do that is to prevent people from driving 120 miles an hour on the highway, as we can understand. So that brings us to this case. Is the best way for the government to give out, or rather to ensure that women have, as they say, access, but they don't mean access. They play with words. What they mean is free or subsidized birth control. Is the best way for the government to do that to force a third party to pay for it under what is essentially executive fiat? Another very important point here that you may or may not catch from the chattering masses out there on these other channels is that this is not a situation where the Congress passed it. This was not in the 2,500 plus pages of the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. We all call it Obamacare. No, this was something that was just decided. This is essentially the equivalent of an executive order from within HHS. The Health and Human Services Department said, you know what? You know what we think is a great idea? Since we got this whole Obamacare thing, which, by the way, is going to be amazing, let's just have everybody get free birth control under their health care, and let's make other people pay for it. This is, of course, a decision that has been pushed for two reasons. Now, so remember that. This was never passed by Congress. They never voted on this. The mandate for contraceptive within Obamacare was decided by an executive agency with, I'm sure, the direct line into to the White House, President Obama himself. This is about two things, very clearly, which fortunately now today, it seems, have been avoided for the time being. But remember, the progressives never stop. One is that this was an effort for this increasingly statist and authoritarian federal government to impose upon the American people that it can tell them to violate their conscience, and they just have to deal with it. They wanted people of belief, sincerely religious people, to bend the knee. This was the Obama administration showing religious people. By the way, President Obama has been, lots of people have pointed this out. I'm not the first. He is religious for the purposes of appearances. I don't think you could say this is a religious man, but correct me if I'm wrong. In fact, many on the left say that he's an atheist, but he was trying to trick people into voting for him. You know, if you like your God, you can keep him kind of a thing. But they wanted to make religious people bend the knee. And then you look at Kathleen Sebelius and you look at the pro-abortion zealots in this country. And they wanted to create an opening to force people not just to pay for contraceptives, but of course also for other issues of, quote, women's health, which if you're a progressive lefty, that's how you refer to it, abortifacients, drugs that induce abortions. And perhaps down the line under federal law, abortion itself. That's what was at stake here today. So when the Obama administration says, bend the knee, religious people, do as we tell you, because we are the ones who are on high. For once, it seems the Supreme Court has come in to save the day and said, you know what? You only bend the knee for one person, and it's not Obama, it's the Almighty.